Hi, I'm Rachel, founder of Parenting by Heart, and as I mentioned, I'm going to give you some short tips that will help make this holiday season with your children much more peaceful. And in the first tip, I'm going to by explaining why you can't keep your cool, even though you may have promised yourself 100 times that you wouldn't lose it on your kids. And I know you probably want to know how to get your kids to cooperate more, but I'm going to address that in the next step because I think that mommy guilt or even parent guilt is huge during the holidays. We're worrying, did I do enough? Did I make enough? Is everyone happy? And I want to give you a little break and give you tools so that losing your cool isn't another thing to feel guilty about this holiday season. In fact, keeping cool is actually really hard to do. I mean, I can speak to this myself because I am not a patient person and I lose my cool, or I would lose my cool all the time if I didn't have the tools. And I want to explain why it's so hard. As humans, we're actually wired for survival. It's in our DNA, and because of that, we have this part of our brain that's very good at noticing the things that have the potential to be bad or go wrong. When we feel completely safe, secure, and content, our brain is calm. But when our brain has an inkling that anything might possibly veer from safe, secure, and content, it actually sets off an alarm. So when you ask your child to pick up his toys and he doesn't, or when your kids are fighting for the 100th time that day, or when your daughter acts disappointed and self-centered about a gift she received, or when your child refuses to go with you to a family event or is rude the whole time he's there, your brain reacts in those situations. It thinks, no, this is not good. Things must change now. And the alarm sounds. And this alarm is actually your fight or flight response. The fight or flight response, if you recall, and it's actually called the fight, flight, or freeze response, but this response is what keeps you safe, and it's the survival mechanism that we share with all living creatures. So this alarm system, this fight or flight response, is often triggered by emotions like fear, anger, or frustration because these emotions tell us that things are not okay. These emotions signal threats to our safety and our happiness. And this response happens so incredibly quickly. But think about it, what would happen if our survival mechanism didn't happen so fast? But the fact that it happens so quickly isn't the only reason that we have trouble keeping our cool. I'm going to tell you something else about the brain. I mentioned that the fight or flight response is something that we share with all living creatures. Now, humans have something that's unique to us called a part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. And this is the part of the brain that allows us as humans to solve problems and think rationally and behave consistently with our morals and our values. But here's the thing, when we're in our fight or flight response or we're in these really, really strong emotions, we literally cannot access the prefrontal cortex. We can't solve problems effectively, and we are not thinking rationally. Instead, we're thinking, I must fix this or change this right now at any cost, no matter what the consequence is. And we're not able to behave consistently with our morals and our values, and that's when we do the things that we regret. Because when we see our child hitting or being disrespectful to himself or us or others, our brain sees a potential threat. It worries about how that behavior might affect our future, our children's future, and it worries about how others are going to view us and view our child. And all of those concerns set off an alarm and we lose our cool. And we do all the things that we regret in order to get our child to change their behavior right now, no matter what. We yell, we make our children feel ashamed, we threaten them and we bribe them, and then we regret. So what should we do instead? Well, I'm going to give you two important tips. And the first is to recognize the physiological signs that actually tell you that you're about to lose your cool. Now, most of us don't recognize these signs, but they are there. For example, I know when I'm about to lose my cool, my face starts getting hot and I feel a pounding in my chest. And I've learned to recognize these signs as almost like a stop sign to me, to know that the next thing I do, I'm probably going to regret. So we do have to practice. We have to learn how to identify these signs, and we have to practice recognizing them, because the truth is they are the only sign that's going to let us know that we're about to lose our cool. And that's why I teach parents to parent proactively, to learn things like these signs ahead of time so that in the moment it's a little bit easier to keep your cool. The other tip I'm going to give you is once you recognize that sign, you want to stop and calm yourself down. Now, I know there are a lot of calming techniques out there, and you may have tried some of them. I'm going to mention a few here just because these are the ones that parents have told me are the most effective for them. So, of course, you've heard of deep breathing, and there's some easy ways to do that. You can always search on the internet or ask me if you have any questions. But deep breathing actually does signal to your brain that there's no threat. So, even though your brain thought there was a threat when it saw these behaviors that we talked about, deep breathing will actually tell your body that it's safe, and that's why it works. So for me, what I use, in addition to deep breathing, which I use sometimes, I actually use a mantra. So when I feel these physiological signs, I start to say something in my head over and over. And I'll tell you, my personal mantra is, you're a teacher. I tell myself that over and over, you're a teacher, because I know that what I do in that moment, my kids are going to end up doing later. And I need to teach them what to do rather than reacting in a way that I don't want them to either. Another way you can calm yourself down is to do a complicated math problem in your head. I know that sounds really funny, but it actually activates the part of your brain that's more rational, and it will allow you to get out of that anger, frustration moment and focus on something different. And that can actually calm you down. Another technique that I teach parents is called the let it out and reel it in. So for some people, distracting themselves using a mantra or a math problem doesn't work, and they actually have to let out their feelings. And I suggest let them out, just don't let them out on your child. So if you have to do that in your head, if you have to go to another room, talk about what's making you so angry and so frustrated. And then once you've let it all out, that's when you start to reel it back in and put your thoughts into perspective, because letting it out actually allows you to access that rational part of your brain eventually when it feels relief of letting it out. And the last practice I suggest and use sometimes is gratitude. Now, I know that that's so cliche, but the truth is that it works. Sometimes when I'm really angry and I recognize that my children's behavior, while incredibly frustrating, also means that they're healthy, they're not sick, we're not in a situation of war or, any scarcity, that allows me to reel it in a little bit. So those are some tips for telling you exactly why you can't stop losing your cool and what you can do instead. If you have any thoughts or questions, I would love to hear them. Please reply to the email, or you can email me directly at rachel@parentingbyheart.net. And I will see you next time for tip number 2.